Man, I love being here. I started as a journalist when I was 20 years old in 1996. Now you can date me. And people have been saying journalism was dying from the day I got in. And I don't want to make light of any of the struggles in our field. But one of the clarifying things about being here with all of you is if we're dying, we're not going down without a fight. And Hannah Beckler is fighting. One of the things I tell my kids down at Howard, where I teach about writing, is that your first duty is to clarify. That the world appears to most people as a kind of fog, as a kind of muck, and even many of the things that we think of being wrong with the world appear that way, and our job is to cut through and to clarify, not just to inform people, but to make them feel things, to haunt people. And sometimes there's a great evil in a society that is so present in our lives and seems so undefeatable, if that's a word, or invincible, that's probably a better word, that we begin to sort of let it wash over us like the air, and we forget it's there. Mass incarceration is such an evil. The United States incarcerates at a rate of 531 prisoners per 100,000 people. It's the sixth highest rate in the world. We hold 2 million people in our jails and prisons, which is the absolute largest in the world. For the first time in 10 years, the mass incarceration rate in this country actually went up this year. These numbers take on a different cast when you understand that our prisons are not just sites of incapacitation. They certainly aren't sites of rehabilitation, but they are sites of vengeance. Prison is where we make people who've broken society's rules pay. Prison is where we subject people to shanks and razors. Prison is where we leave people to suffer from outbreaks of disease. Prison is where we subject people to sexual assault and then laugh about it. Prison is where we shut people up in solitary confinement until they lose their minds. Prison is where, as Hannah Beckler tells us, we literally unleash the hounds. Now, I said at the top that the first job of writing, and I would include journalism in that, is to clarify. Most people think of prisons as sites where you send dangerous people, and to some extent that is true, but what Hannah reveals is something different. In The Secret Terror Inside U.S. Prisons, she reveals prisons as sites of torture. Her story is both deep and wide. It is deep in its depiction of our tolerance of human cruelty. Hannah shows that the violence inflicted upon dogs to turn them into little more than instruments of violence themselves. She shows us the wounds of both prisoners and also the guards who they ostensibly protect. Her reporting is wide in that it goes all the way to Germany, where the dogs are brutalized and traded. It's wide in the sense that it goes all the way back in time to Abu Ghraib to reveal that the pioneers of this program of prison attack dogs carried that practice abroad and left their indelible mark on American foreign policy. There is some good news. I don't want to be all grim and this is about impact too. On top of Hannah's incredible reporting, which I found so enlightening, she's actually been able to inspire some degree of change. Virginia particularly was a site of using dogs in prisons as instruments of torture, and the Virginia legislature has now severely restricted the use of attack dogs. It was a bipartisan bill that actually managed to get a signature from the governor down there. And if you know anything about Virginia's governor, this is not a small achievement. This is an important and monumental series, one that forces us to look at a world that we work so hard not to see and actually manage to force other people who didn't want to see it to act on it. Congratulations, Hannah.
I'm so thrilled to be here. I'm so honored. I'm so amazing to be here with all these reporters and journalists and the Starbucks workers. I mean, that's incredible. So very cool. I'm so thrilled. This was an incredibly difficult story to report. So I'm going to tell you a couple of the things that shocked me. So after the abuses at Abu Ghraib come to light, there's this moment in history where Americans are forced, basically, to recognize that sending a dog to terrify detainees in US custody is a human rights violation. Donald Rumsfeld stands before Congress and testifies that the abuses that occurred in Iraq were, quote, fundamentally un-American. But this was really shocking to me because deploying dogs to attack incarcerated people is exceptionally and historically American. The abuses at Abu Ghraib were not an aberration, but a direct legacy of America's long-standing use of dogs to attack people that we have dehumanized. So this is from enslaved peoples using dogs to hunt down and sometimes execute people who are attempting to flee slavery. It goes to civil rights protesters in Birmingham and Ferguson, and now to people incarcerated in 8 states that continue to use dogs to terrorize and maul US prisoners. I was shocked by the scale of the violence. 295 incarcerated people have been attacked in recent years, 271 of them in just 6 prisons in Virginia, 271 men. I was shocked by the extreme severity of the attacks, both physically and in the intense emotional and psychological harm that lingers with folks who survive these attacks for months or years afterwards. I was shocked by the racist abuse that men told me was hurled at them during or immediately after they were attacked. But something that I continue to be shocked by and what I continue to wrestle with is how did we, as a society here in the US, develop such a tolerance, even an appetite, for such extreme violence that sending a dog to savage and maul a person trapped within an 8-foot by 10-foot cell would ever be considered acceptable? How did we get to that point? It's a similar question, I think, that my sources also agonized over. Linwood Matthias asked how the dog handlers got away with spitting racist slurs and stomping their feet, egging the dog on while this dog was attacking his leg. Juan Lee asked how he was supposed to just move on when he had the same nightmare every night. The nightmare is his 9-year-old son is standing between himself and a lunging dog. Adrian Duran asked why he was attacked if he was lying flat on his stomach, arms spread-eagled on the floor. It's something that I continue to wrestle with. It's so hard to understand how this happens. So I'm so grateful for the recognition the story has received. It's an incredibly difficult story, so I'm grateful for those who read it and thought that these atrocities should end. Again, after we published this story, Virginia passed a law. It's going to sharply limit the use of these dogs to attack prisoners, potentially as much as 80 to 90%. It's not an outright ban, but it's something. It's really amazing. This story took a lot of time and resources, so I just want to thank my editors, John Cook and Sophie Kleeman, and most especially my editor, Esther Kaplan, who's here tonight, all the way from California. Esther, thank you so much. You really pulled me out by the scruff of the neck sometimes from, it's really difficult to continue your belief that something could change by reporting this. I mean, it's so dark and it's so terrible, and the people who continue it have so much confidence that it's the correct thing to do. So to really face that confidence is incredibly difficult, and I'm so grateful for your faith in me. I also want to thank my other many talented colleagues, Nick Carlson, Erica Berenstein, Noah Lewis, Olivia Nemec, who lent their incredible talent to this story. And finally, I really want to dedicate this award to my sources. When you're incarcerated and you speak to a journalist, you are facing possible violent retaliation. They spoke up and they trusted me and they revisited one of the most brutal and traumatic events of their lives in service to this story. So thank you so much.